Just a really simple question in terms of why you chose to just invest in Twitter, and also just what your projections are in terms of, obviously the stats you've given today show that it's being used a lot in healthcare, but in terms of the next sort of 5-10 years, do you think that will continue? Sorry, Christian, Pharma Forum.
Thank you, Christian. So we chose Twitter because it's the most open platform. And I think for us, looking at where the conversations were, the interactions, the back and forth between the different stakeholder groups, we felt that, as I said, we felt that's the new public square, if you will. That combined with the openness of it. To answer your other question, where is it going? You know, I think a lot of the social platforms are in this owning content phase. They want to own all the content that's being put on their platforms. And I think there's been a lot of talk of expanding, you know, the 140 characters to, you know, a huge amount of content. So it would be very interesting if something like that happens that would transform how people would potentially use and disclose information on Twitter. And I don't see, from the conversation volume, it going down. I think that it's only going up, and I think where it's going to start growing more and more is outside of the US. I mean, primarily the language of choice right now is English. However, we just were asked recently by a firm about our capabilities in tracking terms in other languages. And again, once we're tracking a term, and I think the term we were asked was the German word for cancer, Krebs, I believe is what it was. And you know, we tracked, I don't know, 600,000 tweets using that word in German. All sorts of other examples. So again, I think there's a lot of growth potential outside of the US, is really, along with the US.
Yeah, Ruth from the Special Interest Group. I'm going to ask a question you may not be able to answer, but do you think that patients who are tweeting expect pharma to be listening from an engagement point of view?
That's an excellent question. I don't know if they expect it, but pharma should be listening. I think that it's probably, and I think people in this room have heard this phrase before, the most underutilized resource out there is the patient voice. If patients are out there tweeting and communicating via other social platforms about their experiences, how much closer that's as close as you can get as a case study for a pharma company, I would imagine. You know, we're looking very closely at the impact of patient engagement for clinical trials and being able to zero in on, you know, patients for potentially different clinical trials and how we can shorten that time frame for pharma companies, frankly. And we're really interested in sort of looking at that because we think it could have a huge impact in that area.
In the US where it's more permissible, have you ever seen...
I'm sorry?
In the US where it is more permissible, have you ever seen a pharma company insert itself in an ongoing conversation and seen a reaction to that entry?
Yeah, I mean, I think that pharma companies in the US actually are a little more sensitive to some of the regulations, and I think that they're just starting to really engage in the listening, deeper listening than engagement, I would say. Are there examples? Yes, but I would not say it's normal practice at this point.
Okay, Matt and David, one from me. How complicated, and probably Matt as well as David, but how complicated now is the old Google algorithm, that everyone was sweating about, people smoking cigars in a darkened room deciding how high you are in search? Can you tell us a bit about how that is structured now, how you get up there?
It's a great question. It's very complex, as you would imagine. I think the point in search, and I'm going to defend all digital agencies out there right now, which is, well, you're a digital agency, so why haven't you done this? And that's big misconception of how both digital agencies work and how the World Wide Web works and search engines work. Google update their algorithm on average around 3 or 4 times a day when what's called a Google wave goes out. So mobile-ageddon was a horrible term from last year, when you actually get penalized now for not having a mobile optimized site in terms of accessibility, page speed, structure, breadcrumb navs, or hamburger navs, whatever it may be. So my team have to spend hours and hours daily working with our Google counterparts to understand the impact on the campaigns that we run for our customers. Do we get access to the dark room? Absolutely not. We work with Google incredibly closely, as well as the other search partners, for their webmaster tools, Google Analytics, Google Tag Master, to understand the impact for our customers' campaigns, whether it be for patients or healthcare professionals. But I think the perception is it's still a dark room with some techie geeks changing it just to frustrate Microsoft and Bing. But yeah, hopefully that's some insight. But it's staying abreast of it, Carwyn, is really challenging. And we, even as search specialists, don't always get it right. So sometimes we listen to the changes and we see something in the analytics or the webmaster tools which we don't understand, which we need to work with Google to say, hold on, we're following your guidelines here, but that's not mapping across from what we're seeing in our Tag Manager or Adobe Experience Manager, whatever it may be, whatever platform you're on. I don't know if you want to add anything.
Nothing to add.
And do you think Microsoft Bing obviously is going to massive growth? Is it going to take over Google, do you think?
Oddly enough, in Germany, Microsoft, I think currently Google is about 82% of the world's search market. Germany Bing does a little better, around 30%. Yandex and Baidu have the markets in Russia and China, where it's a little bit more complex. That's all I'll say about the complexity in China. But yeah, it's no real challenges to the crown that anyone's aware of. For disappearing user interface is an interesting one. So voice search is going to be, for patients, people disabled, voice challenges, all those aspects are going to be very interesting developments in the area of search.
Are you doing any work in North Korea?
Limited, Carwyn.
Good, we'll take one more question before the coffee. That means you are holding us up from a drink, but that might intimidate people to not ask a question. It probably has. Right. Okay. Before I thank you both, Josh, you're staying this evening. You're around. So Josh is here again for the awards. David is leaving, got a prior engagement. But Matt, you're here?
I'm here.
Matt's here as well. Okay. So if you want to chat to them again during the breaks, or if you're staying for the awards, they're here. We're going to take... It's about, I make it just coming up to 10 past. We'll take about 15 minutes. So if you are going to wander far, make sure you're back ready to go in about 15 minutes. Coffee and drinks at the back. But again, please join me in thanking the speakers for the last 2 sessions. Thank you.